Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Crystal Seeley. I'm the Director of Inventory and Demand Planning for Watsco Incorporated. We are a $4+ billion company, and we are the largest wholesale distributor of HVAC in the Northern Hemisphere. I was really honored that Blue Ridge asked me to have a speaking slot on Blueprint this year because I think we have some really good things to share in terms of change management. And I think we're very unique in the fact that in the last 5 years, we've actually done 4 separate implementations of SCP and SCA into our company. We have separate instances for our different business subsidiaries. And with the most recent one being CE, which is approximately half of our revenue base, in January of 2019. So because of the fact that we've been through 4 implementations, before we had done our 4th one, we kind of knew how it was going to go. You know, the 3 legs of the stool, so to speak, of technology, process, and people. We felt like we had a really good handle on the technology aspect and the process, but the people side, you know, we had struggled a little bit with that in the prior implementations. So when we knew we were going to implement CE, we really wanted to put a little heavier emphasis and focus on the people aspect, and then notwithstanding the change management. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about what we went through, what that looked like, and here's kind of our agenda. You know, we reached out first to get some keys for successful change from the experts and the thought leaders that are out in the change management aspect. Then I'll talk a little bit about what we did in our project, what worked, and some of the things that didn't work so well. And then now we are 1 year plus into our go live. Now what? And some of the lessons that we learned along the way. So in starting to investigate first and make sure that we knew what we were signing up for in change management, we did a little research out with some of the experts in the field. And I was really surprised to find out that some surveys and studies have shown that only 54% of change initiatives are actually considered successful. Wow, that's a really low number. And in digging into some of the results of surveys and studies that were done out there, there were a lot of different reasons that led the experts to understand why just over half of companies that really embark on a good change management strategy actually succeed. So in looking through some of these things, we realized, hey, we don't want these to be our fall downs. These certainly could be pitfalls for us in our company. But we really wanted to say, hey, what's it going to take for us to be in that 54%? So again, in our studying and delving into that, we found some keys, these keys to success that the change management leaders out there had. And I think some of these, we all kind of know as you look through this list, we all go, hey, we all kind of know that. We all understand that's what needs to happen. But the piece that we had really missed was, let's really take those, keep those in mind as we go through this implementation and make change management part of that. And keep these in mind and really drive them into and integrate them into what we're doing in our particular project. So we started talking about, okay, we have some keys to success from the experts. How and who do we need to think about in terms of how we're going to approach the change management? And that really came down to really very 2 divergent groups, actually. We divided out to, our planning groups, because this was a forecast and demand planning initiative. So the primary users of the solution, the planning groups, all the people that are tied to inventory and demand planning. And then it was kind of like all other departments. Well, that seemed a little too generalized for us. So we really started talking about, well, who and what does that really entail? And we all agreed that the engagement and collaboration was going to be primarily with other areas that are impacted by inventory and planning, which, by the way, is just about every other department in the enterprise, for us at least. But we wanted to make sure that we cast the net wide enough to say, hey, other key leaders that aren't necessarily tied to inventory, people in finance, operations, particularly sales, and even our suppliers. We really want to make sure that we were reaching out to all these different groups in terms of our change management and the engagement that we wanted to have during this project and process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did first with our planning groups in terms of our change management and some of the things that we did in our project. So one of the first things that we did is we actually had a little timeline here. We actually started our design process in June of 2018 with the intent to stand up the system 6 months later at the very beginning of January 2019. So in that being our timeline, as soon as we finished our design sessions, I think it was at the end of August of 2018, we actually had Blue Ridge come on site, and we brought in all our champions from our regions. Our regions are very geographically spread. We had all of the champions, those leaders in each region, come in and have the breakthrough, the level 1 Blue Ridge training. And a lot of people said, oh my gosh, why are you having them come in so early? I mean, it's still August, you're not going live till January. They're going to forget everything by the time we go live. And actually we said, no, they're not going to forget it, because really from here on out, they're going to be living in the new future state. Once we had the champions trained on that and they went back to their regions, they became voices for the change and how we're going forward. And having familiarity with the system so early on, it really helped us do a lot of data validation, and they got very comfortable in the system. So a lot of people were like, wow, that seems really early. That doesn't seem like it was really the right thing to do. I got to tell you, if you're anticipating implementation or a reset, absolutely consider this point. It really became a very beneficial thing. And that we realized the closer we got to go live, and knowing that these people were to the level of familiarity and comfort in the system, I can't overstate that enough. We also kind of did the same thing for our planners, the actual primary users of the application. We had our champions trained early in Q3. We actually did the level 1 training for our planners in Q4, also knowing that that was quite in advance of us going live. And again, with the same kind of mindset, get them in the application, get them comfortable. They actually spent a lot of Q4 doing what we called migration, which is really that item supplier setup that Blue Ridge talks about in training. But it gave them a chance to really understand the system, be very cognizant of how things work. And so really it was very interesting that when Go Live came, it was like, hey, everybody's all worried, we're flipping the big switch. It really became out to be not that big of a deal. I did a podcast a couple months ago, and the topic was, day 1, week 1, month 1, the first 100 days of implementation. And there was a lot of focus on like, wow, you got to go live day 1. What was that like? And, for us in reality, it was kind of like, it wasn't really that big of a deal, because all of our people had been living in the system and living that new way, that new future state for quite a while. But basically there were really 2 things that happened on day 1 go live that were different. It's like, hey, planner, if you place an order today, it's really going to go to the supplier. It's for real now. We're in production and we're live. And the second thing was that on that same day, we literally turned off the ability to access replenishment in our ERPs. And we had a third-party application that some of our regions were using that we turned it off. We stopped access to that. And we were afraid there was going to be a little bit of a pushback to that, but we kind of took that tact of, let's burn the boats on the beach, so to speak, that, it was very clear that there's no going back. And we didn't really get a lot of pushback because, again, so many of our folks had been living already in that new way of life for quite a while. One of the other things that we did in our project is we did these lunch and learn sessions. So, short, chunked out pieces of information that really were refreshers. Hey, do you remember how to set up a bracket? Remember when you run an OCO, if you have a bracket, it's got to meet that. Do you remember why you would do reforecasting and what is in that? Some folks would say we did lunch and learn sessions ad nauseum. Because we literally did those probably for, I'd say, close to 2 or 3 months, almost every other day. And, but it was really good because it was this sort of underlying, hey, by the way, we're out here with you planners, we're engaging with you. We want to make sure that you understand what's happening and, come to the lunch and learn, ask questions, listen to other people's questions. So it was a time commitment, but it really turned out to be a very good thing, I think, for all the folks involved. We had this thing called Tips of the Day that we did. And they were really kind of like little cartoons. It was kind of like a little cartoon, and we would tie some piece of functionality in the system. And a lot of people said, well, like, why are you doing cartoons? That's kind of childish, and these are adults. Like, why don't you treat them like adults? And I said, well, hey, the project team really decided to do that because number one, during change management, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of fear. And having a little levity and humor never hurt anybody. So, we pursued doing the tips of the day. But I got to tell you, I know it really worked when I would have people call me and go, hey, Crystal, that tip of the day, the one with the pirates, like I really want to understand that a little better. Or, once I do that, what happens next? Or that one that's got the superheroes, can you walk through that with me? When people started referring it to that way, I knew that while it was silly, it was being effective, and people were tying that together. And, under the covers, that was, some change management with our own group of people that was occurring. We had Blue Ridge come on site and do all of our training. We took advantage of, all the training pieces that they offer. But on top of that, we actually did some internal training as well. And there were two reasons for that is, number one, to really take the functionality of Blue Ridge and kind of, integrate that into how we were doing business. So, so our planners at CE would understand, here's how you're going to use SCP and Blue Ridge, but here's actually how it works in our business. Here's some things that you need to keep in mind. The other thing was, because our regions were a little geographically spread, a lot of our planners didn't know each other. So it was really a great opportunity for them to come in and meet each other and go, oh, hey, I buy equipment for South Texas. Oh, you buy equipment for Northeast. Hey, we should probably forge this relationship. Let's trade numbers. Let's get on email. Let's get on Zoom. And it was really great that they all understood that they were not alone out there in what they were going through, that they were part of a group that had an identifiable purpose and a mission and a journey. One of the very last days, this was before the pandemic, one of the very last days that we had internal training, we kind of did sort of like a quiz bowl at the end of the day. And in order to say my team has the correct answer, you had to ring this bell. So the teams were having a great time. And actually, we were having such a great time that other people in the building were coming down to the conference room that we were in going, what's going on? We hear yelling, we hear laughter, we hear screaming, we hear bells ringing. And it was really great that, they just had such a good time at that. And I believe that, they came away from that with a sense of, wow, I can do this. I get it. It makes sense. And, hey, I can call, my peer in another region at any time to kind of talk through whatever I see happening. So that was really a good thing. Post go live, to this day, we're, 15 months into this, and we still hold weekly and some ad hoc meetings to really continue to support and guide and encourage our teams. One of the things about change management is, it never ends. It's not like we declare victory on the implementation, we've gone live and, everything's over. So even to this day, if there are struggles or people have issues or they need some help or encouragement, we continue to do that, which I think also speaks well to the adoption and how people have embraced this initiative in our company. Project team access. When we started this, we did formulate a project team. And again, I don't know if this is your situation, but we were very fortunate in the fact that while we had people in the organization that had full-time roles and responsibilities, we had it set up to where they could devote a good substantial part of their time through the design, implementation, and up through go live and even after go live. So it was really great that we had people that could be, totally embedded into the project. And if there's any way in your process that you're doing that, or you have the ability to do that, I highly suggest it. It's always tough when you've got your day job and then you're trying to do this as well. And we had just an outstanding team of people who came to the mat for this. But anybody that you can have that can really be laser focused on your project and your initiative will definitely help you in the long run. We put together a team share site for all of our documents, our processes, any questions people had. We had a dedicated Blue Ridge email internally for people to ask questions. We put together a lot of videos. But I got to stop right here and give a shout out to Blue Ridge, because this, the Blue Ridge Education Network, we didn't actually have that at the beginning of our go live, but once it was available, we kind of integrated that into our repository of learning and documentation and references. And that thing is awesome. We're to the point now where we really try to self-empower our planners, meaning if somebody calls and has a question, we don't necessarily turn them away, but we try to suggest first and say, hey, I get you have a question on, profiles. Have you gone out and looked at the Blue Ridge Education Network videos yet? Oh, you haven't? You should go look at those first. And then you should go on the TeamShare site and look at whatever we've done that's CE-centric around that particular topic. And if that still doesn't answer your questions, or you still need more, then hit up somebody on the project team. We're happy to help you. But if you guys aren't using that that education network, I highly suggest that you get your folks out there and using it. It is absolutely phenomenal. Not really sure how we did a lot of that prior to having that, but that has been a huge help in us having readily accessible information and documentation for our folks. And then ongoing messaging with analytics. We did have analytics prior to going on our implementation to SCP, but SCA kind of opened up the whole world, so to speak, for our planners. From even before go live, we really captured our baseline as best we could. And then we really started gauging our progress. What does it look like present being, whatever week or day we were in prior to go live and even after go live, and always comparing that baseline and our present to the goal. For two reasons, really. Number one, to get the planners used to new metrics and understanding that data tells the story. A lot of our planners weren't familiar with service level, goal, and attain. That had not been part of their previous experience. And forecasting accuracy, what does that even mean? And overstock percentage, I have no idea. So gradually integrating that and continually saying, here's where we started, here's where we are now, and hey, look, this is where we're going. The second piece of that is getting them excited about, oh my gosh, they can actually see the needle moving on their performance. And look, my overstocks are going down. And oh my gosh, I'm forecasting, my forecasting accuracy is really good. And oh, my service level attained isn't quite where I want it to be, but I know how to go dig in and find the issues and maybe work towards a better one. So we really tried since day one, just integrating the analytics. And even to this day, we have regionals that say, data tells a story. Let's go look at the data, and the data will tell us what we need to know in terms of metrics and performance. So for the other groups, talking about how we actually kind of reached out and said, hey, what do we really do for our other departments? One of the first things that we always kind of kept front and foremost was, reviewing this initiative. Why are we doing this? What's the business case and the why of the project? And not just to leadership, but really to anyone that we talk to outside of the primary users. And, in implementations and in go lives, there's always good days, but there's always bad days too. And, on some of those bad days, we would have data issues, or something wouldn't be updated, or somebody misunderstood what was happening and executed a strategy that may not have been the best thing. And that's where, the naysayers kind of come to the forefront and go, see, I told you this is going to be so hard. We shouldn't even be doing this. I don't even know why we're trying this. And that's where, again, the change management kind of kicks in and says, listen, it's not all going to be easy to get to where we're going, but just keep in mind, this is why. Here's the goodness. Here's why we're chasing through this to get to this, this new phase and this new paradigm shift in our company. So there's going to be some bumps along the way, and just to kind of keep bringing people back to remember why we're doing this. And that really helped calm a lot of people and, talk some people off the ledge at times during this project. Branding the project. We kind of talked, the project team talked about, hey, do we need to kind of put a brand and kind of something around this project? And there was a lot of people that said, why are you wasting your time doing that? And that's kind of silly and it makes no sense. And you should be spending your time on the implementation, not on figuring out what the project should be called or branded. But we actually did end up branding the project, and it was really good in terms that everybody kind of understood that this is not just a departmental thing, and this is an enterprise-wide initiative. Everyone's involved. It's a formalized project. So the team got together, and we had some of the champions and planners involved, and At CE, they actually ended up calling their project Project Phoenix. So I think that was kind of a little bit of a nod to say that, we're coming out of where we are stronger and better. And it really worked out really well because we branded all the things that the project team did, and in engagements, we always talked about Project Phoenix, and our meetings would be for Project Phoenix. And a lot of people started to recognize that anything that had the Phoenix logo on it was going to be about the implementation and or Blue Ridge and or inventory and demand planning. And I guess that it was well enough received that actually one of my peers at Watsco is helping oversee another major implementation for our company in terms of pricing. And they actually also branded their project. So like now, it's great that when I go out and I see anything that says, hey, Magellan on it, I know that that's related to our pricing implementation program that's in process right now. Continual communication. Every day, every way, say what you can say to people. Listen to their concerns, use the data. Let's look at analytics together. Even casual conversations, turn into a little bit of a change management. I could walk down the hall of one of our subsidiaries, and people would say, hey, oh yeah, you're the Blue Ridge lady. Okay, so I have a question for you. Great. And, we have a good engagement conversation, literally in the hallway or getting coffee. So in any and all aspects, whenever we would have the chance to talk to someone or they would engage us, we certainly took the opportunity to do that. Listening to the culture and kind of that word on the street. People, I love human behavior. People are so interesting that they might go, yeah, it's great. I love this project. I'm all on board. I'm totally for it. They go behind closed doors and they talk to their peers and go, wow, this thing, it'll never work. I don't see it. It's terrible. I don't see where it's going to bring any benefit to the company. And as we would sort of kind of try to keep our ear to that word on the street and see if there was any cultural backlash, we really tried to engage those people, not necessarily directly, I heard you said XYZ. It was more like, hey, I was thinking about your concern from last week, and can we talk a little further through that? Because I have a couple other ideas or some perspectives that I'd like to share with you. And all of a sudden they would be like, oh my gosh, these people, like, they're on Psychic Friends. They know things. They hear, my concerns. Who did I say that to? But, if you approach it in a very non-confrontational way, again, it's a place to build and gain some trust from people who may, under the covers, be a detractor or not necessarily an ally in the initiative. We did hold stakeholder and project team meetings. I think that's pretty much everybody knows that's something that you should do. We did some regional on-site meetings, which actually were great. Most of these were, after go live and, prior to the pandemic. But I found that going on site and, getting in front of, the president's group or all of the field leadership or even, a group of store managers really made a difference because, we would address their concerns, and I would literally go into meetings and say, tell me everything that you think is bad or wrong or you have concerns about. We'd write them all up on the board, and then we would go through and talk through the overview of Blue Ridge and show them, here's how we're addressing this. That fear is unfounded. We can fix this because now you've given us some insight. And that it always helps face to face if you're in a situation where you can do that. I think that a lot of people said, wow, it's so great to put a face and a name to the person, and I hear everything you're saying, and can I call you if I need to? And forging that relationship really just helps up the game a little bit. And I literally have people that I've met once face to face out in the regions, and they'll send me an email or pick up the phone and call me, and we'll talk through whatever they have. And that was primarily because we had met in person and had that time together. We've done some enterprise town halls and AMAs, Ask Me Anything. Some of those are always interesting. And we also wanted to cast the net on when we said talk to other departments is, to include our suppliers in that we knew that as soon as we went on the system and we started, writing orders under OCOs, that things would look a little different. So we did try to reach out to some of our primary suppliers and say, hey, we have this great initiative. It might look a little different to you, but hey, here's all the great things that it's going to bring to our partnership. Look, we can give you purchase projections now. We can have some planning collaboration meetings. If you guys have some kind of price incentive programs, we have much better ways to work through that than we did prior. And some of our folks also said, hey, this is a great time to kind of do, a little reset to say, well, hey, supplier, while I have you here and we're making these changes, is there any way that we can, change our truckload brackets, or can we get, better buying multiples, or even, hey, do I really have to write an order to you on Tuesdays? I'd rather not schedule my orders. I've got this great way to optimize orders now. Can I just write an order when I need it? So, just again, proactively reaching out to them and letting them know that there are changes coming, but framing it up in terms of, hey, it's a better thing for both of us, was really very beneficial and helpful to us. So of all those things we did, kind of what worked, absolutely branding the project, getting those champions early on into the project and living in that new way. Same thing with our planners, getting them comfortable. There weren't any of those day one fears, I don't think, from our planners. Everybody really took it well. That, analytics to track our progress. We started that early and that continues to this day. That constant and high touch engagement with other departments. I literally ran into somebody in a grocery store and we ended up having a 5-minute conversation about business and about, forecasting and demand planning. And I felt really good to say, gosh, we're in a non-work environment right now, but this person, number one, feels comfortable to approach me, and for us to have this really great sort of off the cuff engagement and, leaving with a little bit of information maybe they didn't have before. Transparency. I absolutely love this one. And this is really where, we were very open and transparent. I actually had a president of one of the CE regions call me and say, hey, I've got this issue. It's bubbled all the way up from one of my store managers, and I really kind of want to talk to you about it. So I'm not advocating that your presidents, should be calling you about, item location issues. But it was really one of many situations where I was like, great, let's jump on Zoom. Let's look at SCP. Let's look at the data together, and being very open and showing it to them and saying, oh, hey, you know what? The planner missed something, or here's something that's out of their control. Here's why it's happening. I think it was a big turning point where a lot of people out in the field realized that the planning group and people, the primary users, were not afraid to say, oh, you know what? I missed it. I screwed up. We're managing almost 1 million plus SKU store combinations. So there's always a chance that something happens and a planner misses it. But I think it freaked out people a little bit that we were willing to say, oh, my bad. I will fix it though. Let me make that right. Or thanks for your input. That really helped gain a lot of trust, that along with this transparency and being able to, really get in and look at the system and help them understand what we're seeing. That continuous messaging of the big why, it was really important to getting us up to go live, but it really actually kind of changed the perspective of after go live, we have to say, yeah, there's the big why we did it. So we've done it, right? We turned it on, it's live, but is it working? What's the benefit that it's bringing? We're a year plus into this now, and I think we're really to the stage where we say, it's working, our planners understand it, everyone primarily understands, hey, that, what they're doing and the benefit it's bringing to the company. And now we're to that point to say, how do we up the game? What's the next thing? How do we take it further, better, higher, more successful? And that continuing message may have changed a little bit, but it's still out there. And then that speaking the language and living in the future states now, and encouraging others to do the same. When I was thinking about this, it was kind of that, and you all heard that, it's like, fake it till you make it. And that was kind of a little bit what we were doing, in the very beginning of, somebody in the field would call a planner in early days and say, hey, I need 10 on the shelf. It's like, well, okay, that doesn't tell me anything anymore. I need to know how many you're going to sell. So, getting them to kind of change their mindset and understand that we have a different language and a different way we approach this is so much to the better. And not everybody's there yet, but really, gently and continually saying, well, now we're talking about forecasts. We're not talking about just 10 on the shelf. We have this great new system that'll tell us how many you need on the shelf, but you got to tell me how many you're going to sell, or let's discuss what that looks like. So that was very, very beneficial. And there's a few things that thrill me more than having someone in another department call and say, hey, I heard our forecasting accuracy is, slightly under the optimal. And, I'd really like to talk about if that's because, we need to do more in our operations and planning meetings on forecasting new customers. That is music to my ears, because I know that they're understanding, they're engaging, and they're adapting into, our new way of life. So I'd love to tell you that everything worked and everything was great. It was all sunshine and rainbows and ponies, but I'd be lying. So we did find some things that didn't necessarily work or were a little bit of a fall down. But again, I think, some of the realization is if you have a failure or a setback, that you learn from it. And this slide really is primarily to kind of say, learn from what we learned. So one of the things was, having a plan of succession for your project leaders. About 6 weeks after we went live, we actually lost our executive sponsor for this project, as well as the director of inventory over CE. Now, both gentlemen left the company for personal reasons, not because of the Blue Ridge implementation. People always ask me that. But two of the primary faces to the rest of the organization about this project and this initiative were suddenly gone at probably one of the most critical times. But it was really great in the fact that we had had such a strong project team that we went back to the team and said, hey, okay, these two faces to the rest of the company are no longer here. We all need to step up and be those faces and voices and messengers until we get new people in place. So the fact that we had a very strong project team helped us out. But again, we did not really put a plan of succession in place formally prior to us learning of both people leaving. So that was a little bit of a hard lesson. And I think we came back from that very well, but it was a little tenuous there for a bit. When you have new people and stakeholders that come on board, you have to make the engagement of the project part of their onboarding process. As we would have new leadership and new regionals and, even new planners come on board, they kind of just get thrown into the mix of the daily operations. And it really takes somebody to step back and go, here's why we're doing what we're doing. Here's what it's bringing to us. Here's why we're pursuing the journey we're on. And in some of the early days, we didn't really engage those people to the depth we probably should have. And once we recognized that, gosh, we were spending more time trying to fix misinformation and miseducation and realign perspectives, we said, hold on. Instead of being reactionary to this, let's be proactive and on the front end, kind of make this part of somebody's onboarding process. So actually, again, just this past week, we have a new president in one of the CE regions, and we already have time scheduled to kind of do a Blue Ridge overview, what the system does for us, what it brings to us, how it impacts inventory in his new region, the journey his planners have been on, why they are where they are. All those things are really important and critical for him to understand so he can, best operate and run that region and understanding what's happening in inventory. Continuous support and engagement for those on the front lines. They're getting the backlash where change management has not yet been declared. Whenever, there are times where the planners have somebody from the field that calls, the field person's really frustrated, and what do? They take it out on the person on the other end of the call, on the other end of the phone. So, we really encourage our planners to use the data and be secure in their answers. But to say, hey, if they don't know the answer, to say, I don't know, but I'll get back to you. I'll find out and let me re-engage with you. And always supporting them. And it may be, hey, the support is, wow, you didn't do the right thing. You've got to call them and say, I missed something, let me fix that, or go through the data and help them. But we know sometimes the frustrations boil up, and we know there's still change management yet to be carried out when we get a not so pleasant phone call or an email that, wow, did you really send that email? We know there's still work to do. Don't let fall downs detract from the overall message and the journey of the enterprise. Again, back to that, there's good days and there's bad days. And people have long memories. They really like to remember the one time, you remember 3 years ago when this happened, but they're never thinking of all the successes that have happened, every other day since then and continue. So we really, when somebody calls and says, oh, well, I saw that this happened, or I knew this was going to happen, or this isn't working. We really try to engage them very quickly and very swiftly to say, hey, I get it. Yeah, that was a bad day, or, that was a fall down, but we've learned from that. We learned that, whatever we learned from that particular lesson, we're going to take forward and make sure that we'll do everything we can not for that to happen again. But again, we try to encourage people, let's think about some of the good things and not always focus on the negative. Find the detractors and engage them with high intensity. Again, there are some outspoken detractors that will speak out against a project or an initiative, and then there's some that are not so quiet about it. And whenever I would hear about those or be contacted by somebody, again, we try to really engage them. And it's been very interesting that some of our staunchest detractors, once they really understand what the system is bringing to the company and how it may be making it easier for their departments or their daily operations, sometimes it's a slow process, but you actually get them on board. And I've seen cases where, the biggest detractors and the ones that you're literally dragging them to adoption, all of a sudden, like the light switch comes on and they get it, and they really become allies and ambassadors and devotees. And I've seen this several times in our CE project, and it's very heartening to see that and go, wow, we took somebody who was just absolutely not going to get into this, not believe in it, and now look, they're standing unified with the project and understanding. So that's a place where we know for sure that change management actually, the victory can be declared. So we also know that change management is going to continue while our implementation may be in the books and part of our history of our company at this point. The change management will continue to grow and evolve. We kind of consider a living entity. It will never end for us. It may change form and shape, but there will always be new people to on board and people to engage so they understand what we're doing. So a year after go live, now what? How can you tell that your change management has been successful? We see that people start using the new language and the processes. One of my favorite ones is that they stop talking about how we used to do it. I got to tell you, for a while, whenever I would hear somebody start a conversation and say, well, I've been here 22 years and we used to do XYZ, I kind of used to zone out. And that's a really bad thing to do. So I kind of said, okay, I got to reset on that. And when I would start to hear people say that, my new mindset was, you know what, this is their way of telling me I'm not bought in yet. You haven't engaged me enough. I still have fears that haven't been addressed. So now whenever somebody starts that conversation, I'm paying laser focused attention to what they're saying. So what comes after that is, well, we used to do XYZ and blah, blah, blah. Then I say, okay, then I try to tie that to what we're doing today. And, the change management piece kind of kicks in. Seeing when they stop talking about that is, again, this is where we go, yay, the change management has worked. Where they stop blaming the change agents and the new systems for anything and all the issues that crop up. This summer during the pandemic, we are an essential company, and we've actually had some suppliers who have had some pain points, and we've had some supplier disruptions, and there have been more than several calls to me that say, I don't understand why we can't get inventory in. Why isn't Blue Ridge taking care of that? And again, I go, well, okay, here's a learning opportunity. And we talk about the fact that, our forecasting application can't really reach out into another entity and fix things. I wish that was the case. But I've in our company, anytime Blue Ridge is blamed for anything and everything, that's another opportunity for us to continue our change management. And again, speaking of those people that, we get them bought in, they understand it, they see the value of this, they really do become messengers and ambassadors. I would say a year in, we have a lot less detractors than we did probably in year one. And this is in a year of pandemic. This is in a year of the most uncertain business climate that any of us have ever experienced, most likely. But everybody's really kind of, unifying and teaming up together. And you hear this out there, we're all in this together. We're really kind of living through that now. and a lot of the issues that change management would have to address, I see less and less of those this year, which is great. And then those people, you know, they climb on board. They want to help celebrate successes, and, you know, they collaborate on things that are wrong. I love it now when, you know, I can call a president and they're kind of, you know, they gloat, oh yeah, look at our service level, and, you know, look at where our forecasting accuracy is. And it's phenomenal to hear people outside of the primary users of the application, you know, really kind of talk that way and refer to that in their daily lives. So here's some lessons we learned along the way. I'm actually going to leave this out on the PowerPoint, and you guys can come back and look through this. But, you know, this is kind of wrap up all the things that did and didn't work along the way for us, and hoping that you can take some goodness away from the path that we've been on. And lastly, you know, here's just a couple things that I used to kind of keep these little sayings in front of me to, you know, again, during the dark days and, you know, the times of going, wow, we're kind of beating our head against the wall and this is not easy. You know, these are the kind of things that we have to stop and step back and go, again, what's the big why? And you know, this is a little esoteric, but really this kind of kept us focused and, you know, clear-eyed on what our mission and our initiative was. So hopefully you can learn from some of the things that we did, and I'm happy to take any questions and or comments from you at this point. Thank you.